COSTA is brought to you by FQM Trident Limited, a subsidiary of First Quantum Minerals Limited.
Good evening. Welcome to a brand new year in 2023. Now, Zambians have begun this year with one of the worst power disruptions since the year 2015, seeing up to 12 plus hours of load shedding. President Hakainde Hichilema has themed the year 2023 as one of unlocking rigidities to economic development. Sections of society rather irate over the performance, particularly on the economy of the UPND, with some beginning to describe them only with 18 months into power as a one-term administration. Could the opposition be in status to unseat the UPND come the 2026 election? One of those opposition parties is the Patriotic Front, who were booted out of power just last year in August of 2021. Now, the PF are themselves in a process of finding a new leadership to take over from former President Edgar Lungu, with 10 candidates so far by December of 2022 having paid to contest the presidency of the party. One of those vying for the position is Dr. CHITALU CHILUFYA, a former Minister of Health under the PF administration in the cabinet of Edgar Chagwa Lungu. Dr. CHILUFYA is said to have presided over the Ministry of Health at a time when many describe it to have undergone the worst corruption scandals stemming from the honeybee to the procurement of ambulances. What makes him feel that he is a suitable candidate to lead the PF, potentially take them to the 2026 ballot? Good evening. Welcome to the first edition of COSTA in the year 2023. My name is Costa Monsa. My guest this evening, Dr. CHITALU CHILUFYA, who leads the PF, is our topic this evening. Happy New Year, Doc, and fantastic to see you on COSTA this evening.
Thanks, Costa, and good to see you too, and Happy New Year to you and the people of Zambia.
Great stuff. Obviously, you have been busy on the political front representing the people of Mansa Central in Parliament. But one would be correct to say that you have not been as active as cameras were flashing in front of you during the COVID-19 2020 pandemic, which I believe we'll talk about. What have you been up to rather than basically just, representing the people of Mansa in Parliament?
Well, Costa, thank you very much for this opportunity to engage with the Zambian public and of what I've been doing and what the politics of this country look like today. I am a member of Parliament for the people of Mansa Central, and I am an aspirant for the PF presidency for the convention that is coming in March 2023. I have been working representing the people of Mansa Central and pushing the same trajectory of development, looking at the education, health, infrastructure, people empowerment, the vulnerable people of Mansa, the women and children, the orphaned, and basically pushing development in line with the strategic aspirations that we set when we began the political journey with the people of Mansa Central.
Yeah. Of course, many do not know so many aspects of, your life as a politician, as a professional physician, but also in person. I know that you are a business person. Let's begin with your political trajectory. Some may think that you only stemmed up when you contested probably the Mansa Central, by-election after the death of its former MP Kennedy Sakeni. Subsequently, you got it and became minister. Let's just get a brief background in terms of where it all started from, in terms of your political interest.
Well, thank you very much. Probably the best point to begin from is my journey in my academic life, then transcend into the professional and political life. I am a medical doctor, and I graduated from the School of Medicine, University of Zambia, in the year 1998. I worked for the government up to 2005, serving rural populations in Iteshiteji, Namwala, Monze, and also worked at the University Teaching Hospital. I resigned from government in 2005 to join a USAID-funded project led by the current Vice President of the Socialist Party, Cosmas Musumali, who I hold in very high esteem, and he mentored me in health systems. I worked as a private consultant under various USAID-funded projects from 2005 to the year 2013, when I was elected Member of Parliament for the people of Mansa Central. Before being elected Member of Parliament in 2013, I should state that in 2011, I did contest the seat under the Movement for Multi-Party Democracy, and lost to Kennedy Sakeni. I took over that seat in 2013 after the unfortunate and untimely demise of Honorable Kennedy Sakeni under the PF ticket. I served the people of Mansa Central from 2013 to 2016 as Member of Parliament, and I was privileged to be appointed Deputy Minister in 2013 itself, and reappointed Deputy Minister after the demise of the late President, His Excellency Michael Chilufya. By then, President Edgar Lungu, to be Deputy Minister up to 2016. So I served as Deputy Minister for 3 years. In 2016 September, I was appointed Minister of Health, and I served for 4 years, 4 months. And that was up to January 2021. And in 2021 itself, August, I was re-elected as Member of Parliament for the people of Mansa Central. COSTA, I want to emphasize that I worked for government from 1998 up to 2005. And from then on, I've been a private consultant and a businessman. And I want you to know that I started doing business way back. I started investing in hospitality in the year 2006, investing in my first hospitality venture, 50-roomed lodge in Mansa in 2006. And later on took over another facility in Zambia in 2009. And by the time I was becoming Member of Parliament, I was already an established businessman. I have worked with government for 7 years as a practitioner of medicine and as a consultant seconded to government from 2005 way up to 2009, and later on in various consultancy roles under the USAID funding, but supporting, government. And that's been my journey as a professional and as a Member of Parliament and as a businessman.
Let me take you back to, 2019, and obviously maybe it's best for the Zambian context, 2020, when this new wave or pandemic called COVID-19 hit, the world through China. You were the minister in charge of health then. The world and Zambia was under attack. As a medical practitioner, as a leader mandated to safeguard the lives of millions of Zambians, what was that experience like, navigating a whole new disease and a pandemic altogether that everybody across the world was struggling to understand what kind of influenza this was?
Costa, I want to emphasize from word go that we were battle ready. COVID was unprecedented, but we were ready to confront any epidemic. Yes, COVID presented with its uniqueness, but we had the basic framework to confront any epidemic. I must state that from 2016, when I was appointed Minister of Health, I worked under President Edgar Chagwa Lungu to transform health systems, to ensure that we pursued universal health coverage, put simply, health for everyone everywhere. And one of the fundamental pillars was health security. It's for this reason that we set up the Zambia National Public Health Institute to ensure that we heightened surveillance for any threats of public health nature to the population. We emphasize the need for prevention of epidemics and also the need for preparedness to respond to any epidemic, potential epidemic. And so we had already set up the Zambia National Public Health Institute, and we were already ready as a ministry, as a government, to confront any epidemic. So the COVID-19 epidemic came at a time when Zambia had already recognized the need to invest in health security as an important fundamental of any health system to protect the public from epidemics. So the outbreak of COVID, yes, threatened the Zambian public and scared a number of people, but we did put in measures to respond immediately to that epidemic.
Doc, when you say that we were prepared, one would argue that obviously that is on the basis of your planning to achieve universal health coverage. But some who lost loved ones and others who at that point would criticize we in the media were covering, there was a shortage of supplies, safety kits, issues of, is it antigens or reactive to test, and all those things, the PCR testing, oxygen cylinders and so on. Obviously, this was a new thing that was coming up. What would you say to critics who up to now believe that under your watch, not only as minister, but under the PF administration, so many people died on your watch in that you did not handle the pandemic well?
Costa, I should begin again by taking you back to health systems. One of the critical vertices in health systems is information management. So one does not have to claim better performance. They just have to have recourse to the data. So one of the key areas of our investment was in information management data. So as we talk about whether it was better then or better now, we need to look at numbers. So I want to challenge you that the PF government performed exceptionally in handling the COVID pandemic. And I'll put it this way. COVID broke out in China, and we had a number of cases that were reported globally. And in March 2018, we had the first few cases in the country. At the time that we had those first few cases, we had already invoked the emergency response system, and we had put in place human capital to respond. We had put in place logistics to ensure that we heightened surveillance, to ensure that we picked any new cases swiftly. The first few cases we picked at the international airport, just people coming back. We proceeded with surveillance in the community. We would only have managed to do that if we had adequate logistics.
What about the issue of taking long to lock down?
We invested in a supply chain for the needs we had for epidemics, including COVID. And therefore, we invested in testing requirements. We invested in PPEs, that is protective equipment, and we ensured that our surveillance was heightened. So I want to emphasize here that under the PF government, surveillance was heightened. We were able to detect cases early. We were able to test in the community, curb transmission, and be able to manage cases within the community. And for those that came into the facilities because they were ill, we were battle ready in our facilities. We had trained human capital, we had oxygen for those that needed support, and we had the medicines
but
that we required
to be factual, Doc, at the beginning of this battle,
medicines.
The oxygen cylinders were not available until private sector came on. And I just want to also add, others also argue, I've asked you about not responding to locking down early. Secondly, if you look at this comparison that you say should not happen in a medical setup, the current administration is saying you failed to lock in herd immunity and vaccination. They're claiming they've done far much better and lesser people will die.
A blatant lie. And I want to tell you that we are the pioneers of health security in this country. We are the government that set up an institution particularly focused on securing the health of Zambians against epidemics. And that's the reason why we had stellar performance in the fight against COVID, cholera, listeriosis, and any other epidemics. And I want to tell you again that epidemics management, you will only assess looking at one, morbidity, mortality, and the overall response. So, who set up the emergency response systems? We did. Who set up the Public Health Institute? We did. The current government can only build on what we started in the spirit of succession. So we must emphasize here that the health system has been laid out. The blueprint is there. The current government must not mess it. They must just build on it. The Public Health Institute that we set up in line with the principles of the Africa Center for Disease Control, that emphasized the need for African health systems to invest in health security to protect their citizens from
Would you
epidemics.
accept that you failed to reach the WHO required standard on herd immunity? Right now, Zambia is at over 70% and is a beacon and an example in Africa. Why did we fail to achieve that?
What do you call herd immunity, Costa? Let me tell you this. The denominator should not be the eligible population. The denominator should be the population. So today, we have reached 70% of the eligible population, not of the population. And to speak of herd immunity today is misleading. And if you don't agree with me, I will refer you to the dashboard. Today, with a very reduced testing that Zambia is doing, 2,000 per day on average, and over weekends 600 per day, compared to our over 10,000 tests per day, Zambia is recording 8% positivity. If we are doing the critical number of tests, I can assure you that will be over 15%. And I want to tell you, Costa, today, that we have not attained herd immunity. We have not attained herd immunity, and what we have achieved is a target, is a percentum vaccination on a certain target.
But certainly
and the target is not the population. And so we must not confuse these things.
It's the eligible population.
Yes, and today I want to tell you this. China is posting millions of positive cases every day. We're seeing the same globally. And like I told Minister of Finance Tumbeko in Parliament, Zambia is not yet out of the woodworks. Zambia is on the brink of a COVID outbreak. And what we're seeing in the recent past by the dashboard, with 8% positivity without minimal testing, with 7 deaths just in the last 10 days, I am going to tell you from experience that if we are testing the right numbers, you would see that there are many more COVID cases that is being reported. Probably more deaths than being reported. And I want to tell you that for us, we invested in testing, and we were testing more than 10,000 cases. We would even reach 12,000, 15,000 cases per day. We were honest with the public in terms of data. we were not only looking at facility deaths, we were also looking at BIDs and testing in the mortuary, and therefore we were recording mortality honestly.
Just there, Doc. You claim transparency and honesty. You remember the narrative, and you used to get angry during some of those daily briefings that the public was being misled, especially by us, the media, and many people had accused you of trying to hide, the numbers. I remember one weekend when you announced something, and I think State House also, I think the president announced something, and the next day you announced something that was astronomical. You accuse this administration of hiding the numbers as well?
I am saying we do not reduce cases in an epidemic by not announcing the right numbers or by not investing adequately in surveillance. You will invest in 2,000 tests and you get 8% positivity. You can also invest in 20,000 tests and you even get a higher positivity. The importance of knowing the extent of the outbreak in your community is that you can put in interventions informed by the statistics and you can curb the transmission.
What is the current dashboard telling you?
The current dashboard is showing an average testing rate of about 2,000 per day during the week, 600 during the weekend, and 8% positivity on average. And it's also showing that we had about 7 deaths in the last 10 days. And that is showing that Zambia is recording a surge in COVID cases. And it summons government, one, to increase surveillance, to increase testing, to invest in community and public health interventions, to curb transmission, to ensure that there are public health measures that the public should quickly embrace, and that at facility level we should upgrade. One, the training of a critical mass of human capital, invest in adequate oxygenation, invest in necessary medication to treat the COVID-19.
In short, are you predicting a surge of COVID-19 cases?
I am not predicting a surge. I am saying there's a surge right now, and I'm predicting a worse situation. And I'm saying that now government can do better to stop it. I want to emphasize this as I state this. We will not plot success on the back of failure of the government. But when we win in health, all of us win. We have relatives here and outside Lusaka who are vulnerable. And therefore, I am advising in earnest. One, we have not invested adequately in public health security. Budget instruments have changed, informed by the pandemic that we had globally. Economies shrank by between 3.5 to 12% because of COVID-19, unprecedented. Discretionary expenditure by governments was between 35% and 50%, depending on whether you're a low-income or high-income country, because nobody knew what COVID could do. But informed by what we saw in the pandemic, budgeting instruments have now recognized the importance of including health security in modern budgets. I haven't seen it in the previous government, and I've made it very clear in Parliament. And I'm saying here today that we set up the Zambia National Public Health Institute and provided for the setup of the Emergency Public Health Fund. It's urgent for government to invest in that. It's also urgent for government, one, to invest in logistics to combat the current COVID outbreak in terms of testing kits, in terms of training of human capital, in terms of medicines, and to ensure that all the matters to do with the invoking or the setup of the emergency response center are quickly activated. I am not saying it, and I'm saying that data does not lie. Government has given us statistics based on the numbers that they're able to handle in terms of testing. And I'm saying you cannot regress from testing 12,000 to testing 2,000. And I want to tell you that the economic reconstruction program will amount to naught if you don't take care.
Is there a cause for worry, Doc? Should we be getting back to masking distancing and probably limited, movements at this point in time?
COSTA, I don't want to be, tempted or to provoke nostalgic memories of COVID updates, but I want to tell you that where we are today, there is an established pandemic. Today, the World Health Organization and other global authorities are saying COVID may be pandemic. Our response today will be informed by the knowledge, the experience we've gathered in the past. Where did we come from? We had world variants of COVID in China and spread to Europe. Months later, spread to Africa, including Zambia. We invoked public health emergency measures. We lost minimal lives in this country during the first outbreak, and for that reason, I want to remind you that Zambia was recognized in a survey of 70 countries globally as number 4 to be the safest destiny because of the stellar performance in the public health fight against COVID-19. 2, today, what we are seeing in China, in America, in Europe, signals that with these movements of people that don't stop, Zambia is also at risk of getting a very well-established COVID outbreak. The numbers that we see today are evidence that there's a surge. My worry is that we're not investing enough in determining the exact extent of the problem. And not knowing the exact extent of the problem does not stop COVID. We will see established or increased morbidity. We will not curb the transmission in the community. We will have increased cases that require clinical care management in our hospitals. We will be overwhelmed because we do not have adequate oxygen facilities within the places where we're treating COVID. We will run out of the basic medicines that we require to treat COVID-19 if we do not stop it in the community. This is the time for government to invest in surveillance, come up with the right numbers of the extent of the problem of COVID, announce measures to stop COVID in the community. If we need to mask up in certain places, we should.
Doc, for the sake of time, away from COVID, one thorny issue, it's present right now, it was present under your administration, is the adequate supply of medicines and drugs and health kits in health facilities. And allow me to ask you this, taking opportunity of you sitting with me. You have been affiliated, or rather connected, to what some may describe as the worst drug scandal this country has ever seen. $17 million of unsafe condoms, leaking ones they call them, expired drugs, in the honeybee saga. What role did you play as minister in this under your watch? You flagged off the distribution of these drugs. Some were recalled. You failed to publicly take responsibility over this scam, former minister.
Costa, I don't want to accuse you of being complicit to a big lie, a scam, a big lie of epic proportion, the honeybee scam. The honeybee scam is a creation of individuals who were so scared of the legacy we created in the Ministry of Health. And I want to tell you today that the honeybee lie, the honeybee hoax, is a scam of the century.
Why would the Auditor General, Dr.
Chief, he could be part of the scam himself,
be reporting things that are a scam, that condoms were leaking and all the things we saw before the Public Accounts Committee, approvals being made over weekends and so on?
So I want to put the record straight. Zambia's procurement system, pharmacovigilance system, can never allow procurement of expired drugs. I challenge you, Costa, today to show me evidence now of any drugs that were procured and are expired. Check in any regulatory institutions and I tell you that you find none. Local and external, no expired drugs. I'll tell you too, bring on the table here evidence from a WHO accredited laboratory of any evidence of leaking condoms, rather. And I'll tell you that there will be none. So these are the politics that we need to detoxify in the country. We don't need to defile science. Let's not sacrifice science at the altar of politics just for political expedience. And the media has a critical role to play. Let us not have a consortium of unscrupulous tenderpreneurs, unscrupulous senior civil servants, and paid rogue media to set a narrative that is not correct.
You make very
I want to make a very important statement, and I will request that you give me an ear here. Today, Pharmacovigilance will not pick any expired drugs in this country. Pharmacovigilance will not pick any leaky condoms in this country. I'll tell you that if you analyze all the events that led to that procurement, you only conclude that government worked to avoid a stockout of medicines that is similar to what we're seeing today. And what we are seeing today, which is a very grave situation, stockout of medicines in all public health facilities, is a recipe for increased morbidity and mortality, deaths of Zambians.
Doc,
I will not accept that we use the honeybee scam hoax as a decoy
it's
to
my
the
job,
current mismanagement of the health sector.
It's my job to ask the questions for the sake of the public to get it right, and I'm happy that you're here.
Yeah.
You deny that there were no leaking condoms. You deny
Yes.
that there was no procurement of any expired drugs.
Yes.
You are a member of the legislature as Mansa Central MP.
Yes.
All this started coming out before a public accounts committee. There were drugs that were recalled by the supplier. They appeared before PAC. There were tests done by the Zambia Bureau of Standards who confirmed that indeed there were leakages in some of these condoms and some of these, health kits. You equally were fired at the height of this scandal. So who are we accusing of having plotted this scam? Because you make grave allegations. You say the media were rogue, senior government officials, but it was under your watch in the ministry. You flagged off those things.
And I'll be very candid with you. It is important that we rely on facts. And science would never be defiled by politics. And it's important that if we claim that these drugs are expired, we put the evidence on the table. We cannot just scream defamatory statements without backing evidence. And I want to emphasize this. There was no procurement of leaking condoms or expired drugs under the Ministry of Health in my time as Minister of Health or under the PF government. And if you do have evidence, bring it on the table.
I'm relying on evidence.
Let me just finish this.
Yeah.
The parliamentary committee that went around the country, and I'm sure you've read that report because I know
We'll be
you well
coming to
read.
that. We'll be coming to that.
And I'm not talking about the report that talked about the stock out. There was an earlier report that stated clearly that the quality of medicines supplied to all public health facilities was above board. That report is in public domain. It is important that we invest in strong institutions. Our democracy is only as solid as institutions. And when politicians or unscrupulous entrepreneurs or citizens defile science using established institutions that are regulatory in nature and that are supposed to assure the public, of quality in the services that are being provided, then our democracy is at risk.
There's one issue, Doc,
so
you've not
I want to
addressed.
tell you here that the the institutions have mentioned, ZABs, summon them here and let them put the evidence on the table.
We did, Doc, and that's the question I was actually coming to. Thank you for that. You say there was no WHO institution that claimed or tested, because we shouldn't defy science. What about what ZABs put before us?
So I'll tell you the law on contracts.
And ZAB said they tested for leaking condoms. Further, these condoms were taken to Zimbabwe, I'm told, for further tests. Honeybee themselves, you've said I should present some evidence. I'm depending on what was presented before the Public Accounts Committee, where there was ZABs, there was Zamra, there was, medical stores then, plus Honeybee themselves, having admitted that there were some drugs that, let me not use the word expired, decolored.
Are you changing?
Decolorization.
Are you changing
I want to
the
go
narrative?
I want to go to facts of what was presented.
Are you changing? Are you admitting that there were no expired drugs?
No. I'm saying drugs that were decolored.
Okay. So now I'll give you a very short lecture on pharmacovigilance. Yeah.
So let's answer the ZAB's, findings and the tests.
I will tell you. I'll still give you a lecture, and through you, the public, on pharmacovigilance. Year in, year out, America, Europe records drugs worth billions of dollars in the name of pharmacovigilance. Why? It is a rule in pharmacovigilance that when you order drugs, you test for quality, at various points. It may be at the point of entry, it may be at facility level, it may be even after the drug is dispensed, and then an adverse reaction is reported, and then you check the quality of those drugs. You may find certain anomalies. It could be the pH assay. It could be the storage that may result in change in color. It could be the transportation that may affect, the quality of the product. And these drugs are recorded. This is what happens routinely in pharmacovigilance. This country records drugs worth millions of dollars every year. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. We got a donation during the COVID outbreak of certain medicines from donors, and they did not meet our quality tests. They were recorded and replaced. It is a routine pharmacovigilance program. It is not criminalized. So now, when you want to use politics to criminalize pharmacovigilance, then you exhibit ignorance of epic proportion, and that ignorance is dangerous for the nation. It is meant to dent individuals and is not progressive, and we're supposed to be responsible to future generations. And we are honored privileged to sit in a school of pharmacy, or pharmacology, or medicine to understand this, and that's the reason why we should leave it to the professionals to put it in the right context. Now, let me just finish that statement. Costa.
Yeah.
I want to emphasize here that today, if you look at 10 different manufacturing companies in this country, or suppliers in this country that have supplied medicine to this, you will find there at Zamra a number of companies that have had medicines record under pharmacovigilance. And so you ask a question, why was honeybee pitched out of proportion when other companies, including those in Europe and America, have medicines record? It is called pharmacovigilance. And I am of the view that the public is gullible, and those with voices and platforms to mislead the public may have had the day. But I want to assure you that posterity will always have the truth prevail. Truth will never be...
So my question now is, now that you've lectured me and the public on pharmacovigilance, you do admit that under the honeybee procurement, there were recalls?
Under the honeybee procurement, there were recalls, just like there are recalls under many other...
I hear you. You've lectured us on that.
The recalls that were
the recalls were based on what, Doc?
And I'll tell you. And I'll tell you honestly. Okay? I'll tell you honestly that in a health center kit, there are 66 products. And out of those 66 products, Do you know how many products were recalled? First, it was the Panadol that was said to have changed color. Check the explanation. The explanation was not that the drug was expired.
So you admit that was recalled for decolorization?
The explanation was not that it was expired, and you must participate in setting the narrative, correct?
What? That's why I'm asking you the question.
There were no expired drugs. And decolorization.
You were minister in charge then. You have a platform to set the record straight, minister. That's why I was not minister. You were minister.
Yes, I was minister, and you were in charge of a prominent media organization.
So what happened?
That may have misled the public.
What happened?
So I am saying here that the explanation from the supplier, that is on record, okay? It is on record, was that when medicines are transported, and if the conditions under which a particular drug is transported, everybody knows this, is not optimal, you will find consequences that may include discoloration. It's a common thing. And therefore, that drug, when it was recalled, it was even replaced. And I want to tell you this. This is common practice. Even when it comes to motor vehicle industry, I know you are very well informed. You've heard Toyota Zambia recalling vehicles. You've heard motor vehicle manufacturing companies recalling thousands, millions of vehicles because they've discovered a manufacturing, error or a transportation error. And so this is routine. It's actually very important that we appreciate the pharmacovigilance system in Zambia, that it was alert enough to pick something that would summon a recall. And therefore, Zambia's pharmacovigilance system is alert to avoid expired drugs, to avoid poor quality drugs. And Zambians were never exposed to expired medicines, leaking condoms, or bad quality drugs because we were sensitive enough. Let me put it clear.
To put the record
we
straight,
were
Doc,
sensitive
you are
enough.
denying that you, on your watch and in the honeybee contract, never ever imported expired drugs or leaking condoms.
I'm not just denying. I am telling you for a fact, and go summon any witness in the world, that Zambia, under the PF government led by President Kachagolungu, under my watch in the Ministry of Health as Minister of Health, led a robust transformational agenda in the health sector that includes the supply chain of medicines, that included a very alert pharmacovigilance component that would pick any challenges in the quality of medicines and will be able to stop it. To criminalize a normal pharmacovigilance process is ignorance.
But what is true is that the systems were able to pick up defects in condoms, defect in health kits, as well as decolorization in medicines.
I will tell you this, and I want you to listen to this very carefully. The contracts that are signed between the Ministry of Health and suppliers do provide for possible disputes and do provide for recourse to resolving the challenges. Now, when you decide as a receiving organization that your pharmacovigilance system has detected something wrong, your role is to quarantine that a substance, summon the supplier, get a third party to ensure that they confirm that that was what the supplier supplied, and to deliberate over the dispute. Tell me, as an informed media house, was that done? Absolutely no. And I also want to tell you that we have set standards as a global health village.
Why was it not done?
These are the defects we need to address. And I want to tell you that as a global health village, we have set standards for laboratories to assess the quality of products. And these are WHO standards.
Just for the sake of time.
I want to tell you here that whichever laboratory you tell me here does not qualify to be a WHO accredited laboratory.
Not even our ZABS.
And ZABS is not a WHO accredited laboratory.
Not even ZAMRA has the capacity.
No, listen. ZAMRA is an institution set up to oversee, to ensure that the quality of medicines that our people consume is good. And that's the reason why we rely on them to do pharmacovigilance, one at point of entry or at reception or at facility and so on and so forth. And that's the reason ZAMRA has been alert enough to pick this. And I applaud our staff in ZAMRA.
Doc, for the sake of
you
time,
haven't gotten the point. And if you must expand the time, you must, because it's an important point
you're making.
Yeah, so I'm saying that ZAMRA is a very critical component of the pharmacovigilance infrastructure. And if ZAMRA today tells you that a company called Pharmanova has supplied medicines and we have recorded X quantity of, or we have recorded batch number X, they are not telling you that Pharmanova is a criminal entity. No. They are telling you that they have picked something that could be wrong in terms of quality. And they will engage Pharmanova, and they will get a third party, and they will resolve that matter. This is meant to protect the public from bad drugs. But when you allow politicians and scrupulous entrepreneurs, evil civil servants to partner in schemes and scams and hoaxes like the honeybee thing in order to set a particular narrative against certain individuals for their personal gain, then you will be guilty of defiling science. You will be guilty of sacrificing science at the altar of political expedience.
You need to allow me to also
and
ask,
I want to tell you this today as I conclude.
You need to allow me to ask
my conclusion is that we never procured any medicine that was expired or any condoms that were leaky, and check in any jurisdiction if there is any action that is to do with expired drugs or leaking condoms.
So you make these grave allegations of tenderpreneurs. Who are these tenderpreneurs?
Well, I'll leave it to you as an investigative journalist.
You claim that probably you were part of those that were sacrificed. Other than what you've ably explained on pharmacovigilance, what about the issues raised publicly before the Public Accounts Committee regards the way this procurement and the flags raised by ZPP and the manner in which, ZAMRA handled, this whole honeybee procurement? Again, this happened under your watch as minister. What is your, comment and response on that?
Well, you can only place the concerns on the table and I'll respond, because I'll tell you that the procurement was above board.
But the report of the Auditor General to PAC does not say so.
What was the report to Auditor General?
The fact that they were being awarded the contract, meanwhile they had not satisfied all the conditionalities as required by, ZAMRA.
Well, first of all, as Minister of Health, I operated at policy level, and I'll not delve into the nitty-gritties of procurement. But I want to emphasize that as in charge of the Minister of Health, under my watch, no procurement of expired drugs or leaking condoms. And I challenge you, COSTA, as an investigative journalist or media house, to put on the table here evidence of those wild allegations.
Is President Edgar Lungu one of those then that you would point a finger at as being part of those tenderpreneurs or people that were misinformed for having come up with then a decision to fire you at the height of the scam?
Well, I can avail to you my dismissal letter. It had no reason. And I'm not accusing President Lungu today of firing me because of honeybee. And I'll tell you that I hold President Lungu in very high esteem. And my loyalty is still to him.
Surely it doesn't take rocket science, Dr. Chilufya, that
I will tell you this.
That the president could not fire you. It was at the height of the scandal.
No. The president has got authority to hire and to fire. He doesn't even need to give a reason. And I have a letter in my hand that I can give you that tells you that my dismissal had no reasons. And the president is informed by various institutions, and the president makes his decisions his decisions, he's constitutionally empowered to make decisions, to hire or fire, and no one should fault him. And I will not fault the president's decision because he's empowered constitutionally to hire and fire. And today I still hold President Gachagua Lungu in high esteem and as a man who presided over this country and transformed the health sector, and we had medicines in the country, and we had no load shedding, and we had fertilizer in the country, and the people were not in this poverty that we're seeing today.
Are you saying that what led to your sacking or dismissal was the work of politics, was the work of selfish interest by rogue media, tenderpreneurs, and a scheme of people that were just out to get this one Dr. Chilufya? If so, you were sacrificed. Why?
And I'll tell you clearly that, I'll repeat, the president did not give any reason for my dismissal. And I'll not speculate today. I'll allow you to speculate, but I will not agree with your speculation. My stay in the Ministry of Health should be remembered as a period of unprecedented transformation, a period we focused on transforming health systems, focusing on health for everyone, everywhere, focusing on rebuilding the health systems for universal health coverage. In fact, we focused on infrastructure, building 650 health posts, 6 specialist hospitals, and today there's no capital flight to seek health services abroad. Heart attacks, MIs, kidney transplants are managed today locally because of the transformational and visionary work we did at the Ministry of Health. Secondly, we embarked on a broad human capital development agenda, beginning from training, setting up the first ever medical university, the Levi Mwanawasa Medical University, recruiting more than 5,000 in first intake, and today we boast of having more than 250 health specialists from that institutions. We employed more than 25,000 health workers. Today, we speak of ZAMSA. It was only one building here in the industrial area. In my time, we set up medical stores in all the provinces.
I'll come back to my question. You've laid today on this interview that science should not be defined by politics and misinformation.
Yes.
And I'm giving you a chance to lay the record straight. You say that the honeybee scam
was a hoax.
Was a hoax because of tenderpreneurs, rogue media, and a scheme. And I've asked you a question. We saw people at ZAMSA being fired, people at ZAMRA being fired, yourself and so on. So my question is, why would people scheme against all of you?
I will repeat. There was no reason given for my separation from cabinet. And I'll not speculate, and I'll tell you that I am remembered in that cabinet for leading a transformational agenda in the health sector, for universal health coverage, building infrastructure, recruiting human capital, ensuring a supply chain of medicines, availability of medicines countrywide, a health security program that protected the nation from COVID, that protected the nation from cholera, from listeriosis, and a very effective health financing mechanism, NIMA. Today, with this collapsed health system, hospitals are surviving on NIMA. That was the work I did in that Ministry of Health.
Let's put the matter of honeybee to rest.
Information is critical. I agree with you that we must set the record straight.
You've touched the issue of 650 health posts.
Yeah.
I want you to quickly react to now the UPND who say you boast of 650 rural health posts, but you did not stock them with human capital. It's them who have come now to employ 11,200 health workers. So you left empty shells without equipment, without people to man them, without medicines. And you sit on the floor of Parliament. You've heard the Vice President say that you claimed you had built these things. When they go to take an audit, they're not even complete.
Well, COSTA, it's immoral and extremely embarrassing that politicians will argue with technocrats. First of all, I'll tell you that infrastructure as a fundamental component of health systems is meant to create access to health services. That in itself is inadequate to provide health services. You must bring in human capital. The first year of the PF government in 2016, second term 2016, we recruited 10,000 health workers. Second year, 7,000 health workers, 7,500. Third year, 5,000 plus. Fourth year, 3,000 plus. By the time I was leaving office, we were already at 23,000 plus. And by the time PF was leaving government, we had recruited more than 25,000 health workers. So we did not build the infrastructure only. We also recruited 25,000 health workers, and we trained even more. That's why we set up the first ever Levi Manawasa Medical University. It's a system. These dots ought to be connected. Infrastructure to create access, human capital to provide health services, supply chain to provide medicines. That's why when the Zambia Medical Association state that there are no medicines in the country, this is a noble grouping of medical doctors sworn to the Hippocratic Oath to save lives. And they spend 24 hours in our health facilities. And they're telling you we don't have what to use as we treat our patients. You cannot, as a politician, whether you're a Minister of Health or Vice President, come and dispute that, because you're fighting now with the people that are on the ground. This is not about politics. It's about lives of people.
With your experience, what do you take of our current drug situation? Vis-a-vis, we saw the Vice President on Friday taking stock, and we're told we're at over 63% on average in terms of the critical medication.
Well, if Zambians themselves are saying they're being given prescriptions and they have no medicines and they're seeing their relatives die, if the doctors themselves who are working 24 hours in public health institutions are saying there is no medicine, if the NGOCC, who have done an independent assessment, are saying there's no medicine, where is the government taking the information about medicine? Is it because they attend private hospitals where there are drugs? Are we attending the same hospitals?
Are you playing politics
It's immoral to dispute the user of the public health service and the people who work in these public health facilities on the position of medicines. So let us detoxify health.
But the truth of the matter is the problem of drug shortage also existed under your time.
No. And I will remind you.
People were still given prescriptions,
I will
Dr.
remind you.
You went around hospitals also to check the availability of medicines.
Yeah,
you flew by night all the way to Solwezi and various places to check on the stock.
That's how a minister that's how I elect a minister must be. And that's called leadership. Now I'll tell you that the supply chain of medicine under the PF government cannot be compared to this collapse.
Based on what statistics and facts?
One, if you just look at the period between January 2021 and August 2021, I'll tell you that the average availability of medicines was between 75 to 85%. And I'll tell you that there were a number of facilities above 90%. Today, the Public Health Committee, the Health Committee of Parliament, set up by the Speaker, led by a UPND MP, Dr. Kalila, and led, if you talk of the numbers in that committee, by and large, UPND, went around the country and they stated and they presented in Parliament that there were no medicines in these facilities. If they wanted to use the arrogance of numbers, they would have easily doctored the report. But they were honest and professional and said that there were no medicines in this country. Who doctored that report? That's an honest report. The Zambia Medical Association, a group that is sworn to the Hippocratic Oath to save lives, also approved of the report. NGOCC, I saw their statements. The members of the public have said the same things. Deaths are on the wall for all of us to see. Why would we then dispute the time today, the performance today with the performance yesterday? Clearly, you must admit, Costa, that the health system is collapsed. The supply chain is collapsed. There is leadership failure. And if we do not act and act swiftly, we will lose more lives.
Finally.
And it is important that government embarks on emergency measures to bring in medicines in the country, to support health service delivery, to support the emergency response to COVID, to strengthen health security, and to ensure that the public is protected from morbidity and mortality. And just my last point, even our economic reconstruction program will not succeed if we do not invest adequately in health security.
Finally, Dr. Chilufya, you're among 10 who have, put in their name to aspire for the PF, top job. Subsequently, this means that if the party decides and you make it, you may be in the ballot for 2026. 2 questions. Why do you think you are best suited amongst your other, 9 colleagues to take helm of the PF? Number 2, what is your message to that Zambian this evening who still believes that even before a court of competent jurisdiction has acquitted you, they still believe the narrative that you are a tainted and corrupt politician?
Thank you very much. Number 1, I pitch myself as a visionary and transformational leader that will not only transform the Patriotic Front, but we will transform a whole government. The transformation we saw in the health sector will extrapolate to all other sectors. The time that I reigned over the Minister of Health is a time that we saw unprecedented change. It's a time that we saw the construction of 567 health posts out of the 650, 99 mini hospitals, 6 specialist hospitals. It's a time that we saw ZAMSA reform and decentralize to all provinces. And these outages of medicines we see today were not there. It is a time that we saw recruitment of 25,000 health workers, the establishment of the first ever medical university. It's a time that we established the first ever scheme in addressing healthcare financing that focused on insurance for every Zambian, the NIMA. And today, despite UPND and other sectors arguing against it, today NIMA is holding the service, is holding vote in the health sector. Health services would collapse completely if there was no NIMA. So we credited with the establishment of a sustainable financing mechanism for the health sector. Today, we talk of public health security. We have a system that can respond to health emergencies through the Public Health Institute. All this happened in my time as Minister of Health. And I want to emphasize that in ensuring that we pushed for universal health coverage, we set up legacy goals, 10 legacy goals that looked at our performance in HIV/AIDS. We moved the country towards epidemic control of HIV. We reduced maternal mortality, child mortality. We reduced TB incidence and improved treatment coverage. We are the ones that address the issue of performance indicators in key public health thrusts and also in disease service delivery indicators, in public health service delivery indicators. So I want to emphasize that I am that transformational and visionary leader with a proven track record of performance, and I will be able to extrapolate the performance, transformational performance in the health sector onto other sectors. The scheme by opponents, be it in the ruling government or in the opposition, to taint my legacy should be frowned upon by all well-meaning citizens. The evidence is not there of those wild allegations, and we need to detoxify politics in this country. We need to ensure that we invest in strong institutions of democracy that will be able, one, to detect crime, that will be able to ensure that they dispense justice responsibly and equitably and fairly to everyone. We must ensure that we frown upon the injustice that came out of the honeybee hoax. And I'll conclude by stating that honeybee was a lie of epic proportion, the scam of the century, and only meant to dent a legacy in the health sector that transformed the health sector and put the country firmly on track to achieve universal health coverage. And today, the government must just build on what we started.
Dr. Chilufya, all the best as you go to the convention of the PF in March of this year, and we'll continue watching the space. All the best.
Thank you so much, Costa. And
the big question is, who will lead the PF The convention comes up in March of 2023. My guest this evening has been Dr. CHITALU CHILUFYA, the former health minister under the PF administration, setting the record straight on a number of issues, including the honeybee scam. We are exclusive on Facebook, is at Diamond TV Zambia, also on YouTube. Remember to catch the repeat episode. Good night and have a prosperous 2023.
COSTA was brought to you by FQM Trident Limited, a subsidiary of First Quantum Minerals Limited.